Good morning, members, officers, and any members of the public who are viewing the live stream of this meeting. Welcome to this meeting of the Employment and Staffing Committee. My name is Councillor William Jackson Wood, and I'm the chair of the committee. My usual vice chair of this committee, Councillor Sally Ann Hart, cannot be with us today. So I'd like to propose to the committee that we appoint Councillor Anna Bradman as the vice chair of this meeting. Do I have a seconder for this proposal? Thank you. So, Mark Howell, and can I take that by affirmation? Perfect, thank you. Thank you, members, that's agreed. Councillor Bradman, can you make your way up to the front table and assume the role of vice chair? Thank you very much.
Yes, I'm fine, thank you.
Great. So we just have some housekeeping points to go through. Just a quick note to say that everything on your desk, including your laptop screen, is likely to be broadcast at some point. The camera also follows the microphone being switched on, so councillors and officers are advised to wait a couple of seconds before speaking, just to allow for the camera to catch up. And can those participating in the meeting via the live stream indicate that you wish to speak during with the chat column? Please use the chat column. Please do not use the chat column for any other purpose. Please make sure that your device is fully charged and that you switch your microphone off unless you're invited to do otherwise. Please ensure that you've switched off or silenced any other devices so you do not have to interrupt any proceedings. Please use your headset when speaking and hold the microphone close to your mouth. When you're invited to address the meeting, please make sure that the microphone is switched on. When you've finished addressing the meeting, please turn off your microphone immediately. Please speak slowly, clearly, and please do not talk or interrupt anybody. Committee members present in the chamber, I will now invite each of you to introduce yourselves. Member, after I call your name, please turn on your camera and microphone, wait a couple of seconds and say your name so that your presence can be noted. As I said earlier, my name is Councillor William Jackson Wood, and I'm the member for the Shelford ward. My vice chair is Councillor Anna Bradman.
Hello, I'm Councillor Anna Bradman. I'm a member for Milton and Waterbeach. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Vane.
Good morning, Peter Fane. I'm the other member for Shelford ward.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Howell.
Good morning, Chairman. My name is Mark Howell, and I am one of the councillors for the Caxton and Papworth ward.
Thank you. Councillor Richard Stobart.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, colleagues. I'm Richard Stobart. I'm one of the councillors for Girton Ward that includes the villages of Drydraight and Madingley.
Thank you. And Councillor John Williams.
Good morning. I'm John Williams. I'm one of the councillors for Fen Ditton and Fulham Ward. I'm also the lead cabinet member for resources.
Perfect. Thank you. I can confirm the meeting is quorate. First point on our agenda today is apologies. Can I ask our Democratic Services Officer, Lawrence Demery-Homan, if there are any apologies for absence today?
Thank you very much, Chair. Just the one apologies today from Councillor Sally Ann Hart, and Councillor Peter Fane has kindly stepped in as a substitute.
That's great. Thank you very much. Point number 2 is declarations of interest. Do any members have any interests to declare in relation to any item of business on this agenda? If any interest is subsequently becomes apparent in this meeting, could you please raise it at that point? Is there any declaration of interest at this point? No. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So to continue to point number 3, which is the minutes of the last meeting. Are members happy to approve the minutes of the meeting of the committee held on the 8th of September, deferred to the 28th of September as correct record? Anna Barron?
Chairman, I had an alternative form of the wording for the minutes of the 8th of September, which I gave to Lawrence Damery Home so that we could look at it to consider. It's up on the screen. It was just the preamble at the beginning. It was a little bit confused, and so I thought it might be easier to put that explanation if members agree it. It's the preamble prior to point 1 on the agenda.
Indeed. Okay. So at this point, I don't know if everybody's had the time to review the initial interest. Mark Howell, sorry, Councillor Howell, have you got any points?
Sorry, Chairman. Chairman, did the meeting really finish at 3:20? It says that on page 2. Is it? Was it that long?
No, the point was the meeting on the 8th only continued for about 40 minutes, and then it was adjourned, and then the meeting on the which was on the later date started at 2 and carried on until 3:20.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah, got it, of course.
So,
yeah.
so that's why I suggested this wording, because it makes it
Fine.
clearer the sequence. Because the meeting was adjourned and then resumed.
Sure. Sorry. So just to clarify, what we're talking about here is the initial meeting minutes for the meeting that was adjourned. Unfortunately, because of the situation in the room at the time, there was a little bit of a back and forth, and I don't think it was particularly clear, or Councillor Brandon had actually noted the fact that it's not particularly clear, so it was actually proposed different notes from that meeting. Councillor Payne?
Yeah, it seems to me that the alternative proposed by Councillor Adam Bradnam is clearer and deals with that point, and that we should approve that amendment. And with that, I would recommend that we approve the minutes.
Great. Thank you. Okay, on that basis, can we take it by affirmation that we approve those amendments?
Agreed.
Thank you. The committee therefore agrees with the amendments of the meetings as corrected by affirmation. So point number 4, we have an update on the progress for planning of the 4-day week trial. Members, we now come to our 4th day trial, which updates on the progress planning over the trial of the 4-day week. And we're asked to note this report. We have here the Chief Exec, Liz Watts, which is here to present the report.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, members. So hopefully the report is fairly self-explanatory. We're in the middle of the planning, literally right in the middle of the 3-month planning period at the moment. I've summarised under paragraph 7 the sort of key activities that have taken place so far. And I'm happy to kind of respond to any queries that you've got. Generally, I'd say that the planning period is going really well. It's a real lesson in democratisation of change. This is one of those change projects where we have genuinely involved the whole organisation in taking part in how they want to plan a 4-day week. And that's been incredibly powerful. Because I think people have felt a sense of ownership over the project and that they have an impact on how their lives are going to change as a result of the trial. But of course, it's not without its challenges, as any major change is, but we're working through kind of those issues very systematically. And my thanks go to all of my colleagues, particularly in the project team, who you know are really being supportive in addressing all of the issues, challenges, opportunities as they come up. Just a brief note on this report. I sent this report also to Strategy and Resources Committee at Cambridge City Council, because obviously the planning service is part of the trial and that's a shared service. I will be going to their committee in January with an updated report, and I'll email you that report, and then I'll report back to you in February and to them in March. So there'll be a series of reports, some of which will come to your committee and some of which you'll get an email. Happy to answer any questions, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Stobart.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, from paragraph 7, which is a nice summary of this quite rich range of activities, just like to ask Chief Executive, for the smaller groups that are working, is there a pattern emerging of how they're tackling the question, you know, of how do they change their working patterns? And looked over the groups as a whole, are there any, I mean, almost quotables of things that people are thinking, innovative steps, changes of practice, evidence of, I think you're saying there's a real democratization, so lots of inputs. How is it working out, basically? So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Stobart. Liz, have you got any points on that?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Yeah, I suppose there's a range of things that people are coming up with. We've actually got a really good ideas board now on Insight, where people can post ideas about improving productivity, and that probably is a snapshot of how the organisation is thinking. So there's stuff around IT, how, you know, some people use IT brilliantly, and some people are learning a lot about how to improve their use of IT. Some people are thinking about how they organise their day, and you know that there's lots of kind of quite good evidence out there around time blocking, for example, important but not urgent work, for example, quite often sits on people's to-do lists. I think I've talked to members about that before. People are talking about how they're going to work within their teams to make sure, you know, that they are doing the high-value work, that they're not kind of doing stuff that they've always done just because they've always done it. So there's a real range of ideas around how people can become more productive. The way that we're going to, obviously we ran all the red team sessions, and a lot of kind of productivity ideas came out of those as well. So what we're doing now is, during November, kind of looking at solutions to issues, drawing together all of those, but also some kind of best practice around productivity. So, for example, this week we're sending out best practice around agenda planning. So, you know, how many meetings are people going to where it's not entirely clear what the purpose of the meeting is, not entirely clear why everyone was there. There's no timed agenda, so quite often, you know, as I'm sure you'll experience, you can spend the first hour talking about one item and then the remaining 6 items don't get a fair look in. So we're sending out guidance about that. So by December, we will have a sort of principles of working document for the whole organisation to start the trial, where we have guidance which includes stuff around productivity and changes to the ways of working.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Fane, do you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. I'm very interested to hear Chief Executive referring to the process of looking at the way we operate more widely and how we make better use of time. And I think we as councillors need to reflect very closely on that. As Chief Executive knows, I have faced some quite tough questioning, as She did herself from one of my parish councils, and I'm expecting more of that next week. I was interested in the reference to the Chief Executive of, the Head of HR from the City Council attending, and again, the Chief Executive mentioned this. I'm wondering, whilst it's not directly relevant to this council, how the City Council is responding to this in relation to shared services, particularly planning, of course. And, you know, it has to be said that whilst it is a shared planning service, there is a certain tendency amongst staff to feel that they're either Cambridge City or South Cambs, depending on where they come from, and particularly those who've been here longer. And I'm wondering how City Council is adjusting to the strains this will put on them, that some of the people servicing City Council roles are part of this trial.
Thank you, Councillor Fane. Liz, do you have any thoughts around this?
Thank you, Chair. So we're in really close dialogue with the City Council. As you said, the Head of HR is in the project team, and the Unison rep, who we share between the City and South Cambs, is also in the project team. So in that sense, they have kind of, you know, full sight of what we're doing, what we're planning, and are feeding into how it will impact the city. As you say, there's, you know, there's the planning service, which is part of the trial, and then there are the kind of, I suppose, peripheral services who may be impacted by the trial. And I think it's too early to kind of really talk in much detail about that, Councillor Fane, or draw any conclusions, but it's something that we are very alive to, that, you know, we kind of have a sort of corporate responsibility to make sure that, you know, it's like sort of cost shunting from one organisation to another. We have a responsibility to make sure that we don't shunt, you know, our successful productivity onto another organisation, and that turns out to be unhelpful for them. So I think having the City in the room is really important. I'm always in kind of close dialogue with the Chief Exec from the City. As I said, I'm reporting back to the City's Strategy and Resources Committee. I think it's too early to say, so I suppose no issues have been raised of kind of concern so far. In a way, until we get into the trial, I think it's quite hard to say what might kind of emerge that we couldn't necessarily have anticipated, but it's something that we're keeping a weather eye on.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bradman?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, Liz, and it's a very positive report. I noticed that the data goes up to the 1st of November, and I wondered if you'd had, you know, I was just spotting that the 3.42 on, I was thinking about, because I've asked previously if people thought that they were having to work really hard to deliver their role before, would going to a 4-day week be worrying for them? And so I'm looking at this data about when I think about delivering my role in a 4-day week, I feel, and then 3.42 is what it was at the end of October, and that's between not sure and positive. And I'm wondering if people, it's your perception, and I appreciate the data has to go in before, you know, to get the agenda out, but I was just wondering whether you felt that people are beginning to feel more positive than that over how to deliver the work. Thank you.
That sounds right. Does she have any thoughts about that?
It's
Page
11, electronic 11, 7 paper.
7 paper.
Thank you, Councillor Bradnam. Sorry for the slight pause there. I was actually just looking for the live data from this week's, so we call this a pulse survey, which just gives people, it gives us a sort of sense of, you know, in the moment, how are people feeling? And obviously the committee kind of publishing cycle means that you're getting slightly out of date data. So the data from this week so far, and it's only been 28 responses. When I think about the 4-day week, I feel is 4.32, so that's an improvement. When I think about planning for the 4-day week, I feel is 3.68. When I think about the support available, is 4. And when I think about delivering my role, is 3.79. So all of those have increased marginally. There were some sort of sticky issues, I suppose, that people were getting frustrated about because we weren't coming to a conclusion on them. And one of those, for example, was, can I take any day off, or does it have to be a particular day? And so last week we put out some emerging guidance which addressed about 7 or 8 of those sticky issues, and I think that really grounded people in the sense of, okay, now I kind of feel like I've got a bit more sense of direction here. And I think that potential, I mean, I can't say, and therefore the results of the pulse survey are increasing, but the mood music I get from the organisation is that people were really pleased to see the emerging guidance. I suppose just one thing on that is that, you know, as I mentioned, we're trying to democratise this project. We're trying to make sure that everybody has a say. And so while people, you know, quite often want to be told what to do, we are trying to make sure that we gather as many good ideas from people as we can before we land anything, because the best ideas always come from the people, you know, who are doing the work, if that helps.
I'm very glad. Sorry, just coming back on that, if I may. I'm just very glad that you're keeping an eye, that you have live data, because I think that's really crucial, because you could see an impact of one thing might make your data dip, and it's good to catch that up. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Councillor Howell, I think you have a question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much with regards to paragraph 7 and the bullet points there. With regards to the bullet points, you have on that one of them a feedback form from the website that members of the public can use to ask questions or make comments about the trial. May I ask, are we contacting or proactively contacting those members of the public that use our services on a very regular basis? So I'm thinking more, not so much members of the public, which we might only have dealings with South Cams because a bin has been missed once a year or something, but more those members of the public that are involved in the planning teams or other, which have regular contact with the council as part of their day-to-day. And can we be proactive in contacting them, please, and asking them what their opinion may be? Because that would be a very interesting to see, because they are our customers on a regular basis as opposed to just providing a service. That was more of a suggestion. The other thing was that I believe when I first saw the details of this, one of the purposes with regards to make us more desirable, should I say, with regards to recruitment, how are we going to define whether or not that has worked over this time period? Because in essence, this is quite a short time period. And so I would like to know if any thought, and maybe not at this present moment, it's not been, but how are we going to see if this is working, this particular part is working? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Howell. Okay, yes, so Liz, do you have any thoughts or points around that at all?
Always. So thank you. The suggestion about the survey is really valuable, and we've already introduced a 5-minute survey that is available on our website. We're sending it, most people are adding it to email signatures, and planners in particular do regular surveys anyway. So some of our services, you know, are already doing it, but you're right, we need to kind of increase the feedback that we get from the public there, because it's really, really important. Obviously, you'll know that we do the South Cams magazine, which goes out to 70,000 households in the district, and we've got an item, a news item there in November, December issue, and again, we're asking for feedback there. So we're trying to get as much feedback as possible. Interestingly, on the website and the form that you referred to in my report, I think we've had about 8 or 9 responses to that. 4 were questions, which we answered, and 5 were comments. So, you know, obviously important, but not going to be a sort of rich source of data for us in terms of what service people are kind of experiencing, what service levels people are experiencing. So you're absolutely right on that one, Councillor Howell. In terms of recruitment, so we were really clear when we proposed the trial to Cabinet in September that recruitment is something that is will be almost impossible to measure in 3 months. You know, people don't join an organisation on the basis of a 3-month trial. Although anecdotally, it appears that maybe they do. So anecdotally, we are starting to see, you know, some really interesting jobs where we've struggled to recruit in the past, and suddenly, you know, we've maybe have advertised it. I'm thinking one job in particular where we advertised it twice, and the third time we advertised it after the announcement of the trial, we had a huge number of applications and a lot of qualified people. Now, that is very anecdotal, and it's one example. We've had, you know, other anecdotes like that. But what, you know, so I think what the trial will do is I suppose, put a marker down that this is an organisation that is progressive and takes the well-being of its people very seriously and is prepared to try new things. But in terms of measuring, you know, actually having quantitative data about recruitment, we can't do that in the 3-month trial. And the report to Cabinet was clear that if the 3-month trial is successful and we move to a longer trial, say a year-long trial, that's when we would capture the data on recruitment, because that's really, I think, and I'd be happy to know what members think, when you might expect to see, you know, some significant impact on recruitment.
Yes, indeed, yes, thanks.
It's not a question, it's a statement. If we are going to go on to another trial, I do hope then that those who are not only desk-bound people will be incorporated, because there's a sense of unfairness otherwise. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, please, yes.
So just to confirm, we're definitely planning 2 trials, 2 3-month trials, one for desk-based people and one for colleagues at the depot. And the depot management team are already kind of working through the modelling around how a trial would work. As I've said in the past, a depot trial is really, really different because there's only so many ways that you can pick up a bin, essentially, or sweep a street. And so the modelling around that is really different. But we are definitely planning to do the depot trial for, sort of later next year.
That's great, thank you very much. Councillor Sobars, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, Councillor Howell did steal my thunder a little bit on those points, so thank you very much. So the this reaction to the request for information from the public, I think was very enlightened, and I think the Chief Executive has nicely summed that up. But I wonder about the kind of feedback that councillors are getting from residents through parish councils and so on. And Councillor Fane referred to sticky meeting. I've had 1 or 2 messages from concerned or maybe even angry residents, and we've taken the line. I think that we've agreed on the benefits of the scheme. But I wonder how we capture this emerging stuff that's coming from other sources. How do we best pool that? I know in my case, Girton resident said, are you offering your South Cambridgeshire staff a 20% pay increase? So we went through all of that, and actually that particular resident came back somewhat pacified. But I wonder if we are getting the message over.
Thanks, Councillor Stobart. So, sorry, just from my understanding there, so what we're actually saying there is, the communication is actually going out to the public.
It's 2 ways, isn't it? It's are we as councillors getting the message out where we are being asked, and any feedback that we're getting is that being helpfully consolidated for the benefit of the South Cambs management team. Yeah.
Cool, that's great. Thank you very much. If you've got any thoughts, I'm wondering if that's something that you can answer. But
I mean, I would really welcome feedback from your parish councils. As Councillor Fain said, I attended Great Shelford Parish Council where, actually the feedback was really mixed, polarised almost, between councillors who were fully supportive and councillors who were adamantly against. And as with the red teams, we started to see a pattern of things coming through from people. So it's unlikely that parish councils are going to, have unique feedback from every single one. But it would be great to understand what your parish councils are seeing, so that we can start to see the pattern. And maybe I could put something in my email to members, asking members to kind of forward me that feedback. That would be really helpful.
that's great, thank you. Councillor Brennan?
Thank you. It's great that the Chief Exec is welcoming feedback from the public, but I just wanted to ask again two things. One was my understanding that actually, in terms of the public, the intention was that delivery should be seamless, so the public shouldn't actually notice any difference. I suspect grumpiness at parish councils might be an anticipation of what might happen. So unless there are any real examples of things where people haven't been able to get through, or because it hasn't actually happened yet. So I'm just a bit concerned about that we shouldn't, to accept that we're in the planning phase at the moment, and people who are expressing concern about whether it'll work or not, they need to give us real examples. And in fact, they can give us those through, I believe, the complaints form. Is that right? So if they have a genuine concern, they can raise that directly with the council through the complaints form. In fact, one of the things I asked early on was, would it be a good idea to call that a queries form rather than a complaint form? Because sometimes people don't want to complain. They just want to ask, how will this work? Or what happens if I can't get hold of somebody? So I wondered if, through you, Chair, whether Liz had any thoughts about that. Thank you.
That's a good point, thank you, Councillor Brennan. Yes, Liz, do you have any thoughts?
Thank you, Councillor Bradnam. So look, I think in terms of, I'm always, I suppose, surprised at how many times you can think you've communicated something to people and then find out that you epically failed to communicate. And so from my perspective, it's about having as many channels as possible that go both ways. So us communicating through as many different channels as possible, and us getting feedback from as many different channels as possible. And of course, that there are some things where we'll just, if somebody just wants to kind of, complain about something without actually having a, what is the question at the end of it, then they're perfectly entitled to do that. But there's not much I can do with that. But it's still really useful to get the feedback. So I think I'd certainly encourage people, to help us make sure that we are capturing feedback, because, that is really important to us. Just to confirm, Councillor Badnam, that on the website, we do call it feedback and not complaints, so people are, don't feel like they necessarily need to be complaining.
That's great, thank you very much both. Councillor Williams, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. I think it's a comment actually, and I think this is a difficult thing to get across, because we're asking people to change their concept of work and what work is. So we're asking people to look at the output, not the hours that are worked. And it's very difficult for some people to grasp that, living in a culture where, up until recently, you worked a certain number of hours. You weren't judged by the output of those hours as such. And what we're doing is saying to our colleagues, what we're interested in is the output. We're not interested in, to be honest, when you do it or how many hours it takes, although obviously there is a contract and there are a certain number of hours people are contract. But what we're really interested in is you delivering a good quality output. And that's a very difficult concept to get across to some people. And we must be patient, but I do think that must be something that that's the whole object of this exercise. And that's what we should be trying to explain to people and get across to people, that what we're doing here is delivering a high quality output, and how we deliver that output is actually, so long as it delivers the output, is down to the individual colleague.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. And I completely agree. Yes, it's productivity versus the actual hours that are put in. Like Liz, did you have any thoughts around the comments that have gone around that, or any sort of points?
I mean, I only to say I think you've summed up the whole kind of project really, really well. It is exactly about that, and that's the conversation that we are trying to focus on with colleagues, is how can you change what you're doing to be more productive, and in return get an extra day off a week. That's the story, and everything else, you know, is kind of, I suppose, sort of detail or issues around the edges of that. But that's the key story. How can you be more productive? Really change what you're doing, how you're doing it, and get a reward in return.
Great, thank you very much, both. Councillor Fane, you had a question?
Thank you, Chair. Like Councillor Williams, it's more of a comment. I haven't yet looked at the feedback form, but as Councillor Howard says, I think it's particularly important we engage with customers, those who... the smooth running of the trial, for instance, will depend on how, in part on how some other organisations work out how to engage with us smoothly. And I think, you know, whilst we may get comments from individual parish councillors, that will mainly be on a sort of political basis, whether they approve the principle of this or see it as a effective pay rise and so on, as Chief Executive will recall from our conversations in Great Shelford. But I think the key thing is parish clerks. I think it is very important that parish clerks understand how they engage during the period. And it would be unhelpful if parish clerks were to give the indication to their parish councils that it was not working smoothly. And I wonder what efforts will be made to bring them on board.
Thank you, Councillor Fane. Yes, good point. Again, Liz, I don't know if you've got any sort of thoughts around that.
Yeah, and interestingly, I was at Willingham Parish Council this week. I was doing a ward walk, and the parish clerk said exactly the same thing. This is a tricky issue because the way that we are moving before we even thought about the 4-day week was to generic inboxes and a customer contact centre so that we had resilient response rates. And, you know, obviously that's even more important in the 4-day week. Now, I think parish clerks, you know, and I completely understand this view, want to have a relationship with a person in the council or a few people in the council. And I think that's, you know, absolutely right. We all know that, you know, work generally happens better when you've got a relationship with the person you're working with. So it is something that is a live issue at the moment, actually, Councillor Fane, in terms of how do we address that, and do we still need to be sharing slightly more detailed information with parish clerks, but not to a kind of wider audience, so that we maintain, I suppose, the you know, the robustness of the generic inbox or the customer contact centre, which is part of our channel shift strategy. But it's a really good point, and it's something that we are actively, in fact, I've been actively discussing it this morning following my visit to Willingham.
great. Thank you very much. Okay, I don't think we have any more questions from the room at all. No? Okay. So that was, thank you very much, Liz, for your contribution there and for presenting the report. We are invited to note the contents of that report. Okay, moving on to item number five, which is the retention and turnover report for the second quarter of this year. Again, the committee is asked to be noted. Sorry, the committee has been asked to note this report. We have Jonathan Corbett, the HR advisor, here with us virtually to present the report. Jonathan.
Yes, Jonathan Corbett, HR advisor. Thank you very much. Just to give a brief summary of the retention and turnover report. This provides an analysis.
Sorry, Jonathan, just a quick. Sorry to interrupt you. I'm sorry. You're extremely quiet. We're just going to try and see if we can change the volume, Jonathan. Oh, really? Jonathan, I don't know if there's any chance that you could either change the mic that you're using or to do something on your end at all. We can't really hear you, unfortunately.
Is that any better? Can you hear me now?
It's marginally better. Perhaps if you can, I do apologise, but if you can maybe speak up or something, that might help. So.
Perhaps speak closer to the mic with that. Unfortunately, I don't have an alternative microphone that I can use.
No, okay. Apologies about that. We'll try and pay attention. But yeah, if you can speak up, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Okay. So the retention and turnover report is for quarter 2 of this year, 1st of July to the 30th of September. Key trends are turnover rate is fairly stable since the previous quarter. It reflects a continuation of the stable trends seen over the last few quarters. One of the most notable things that have happened is an increase in the percentage of people accepting new jobs within the private sector compared to the public sector. And this would be something to keep a note on in case this trend continues in future months, because it may be the start of a trend. There's also suggestion that one of the most cited reasons for leaving at the moment is achieving a better work-life balance. So there is a possibility that there might be benefits from exploring new methods for improving retention at the council. We've also got, if we're looking at the labour market trends as well, it says that quite a lot of employers, nearly half of all employers, have hard to fill vacancies, and so focusing on recruitment and retention. And we've recently recruited a new learning and development officer within HR to help with the goal of reviewing employee training trends. And also, as the 4-day week, as we mentioned, it provides a unique benefit which may help to improve recruitment and retention in the organisation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Do we have any questions at all? Councillor Bradman?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Corbett. I had a couple of questions. One was a simplistic one about the format, and I was just surprised to see on some of these reports something like 9 digits after the decimal point, which is superfluous but also slightly confusing to look at this data when there's so much data after the decimal point. And in that particular case, I'm looking at, in the electronic version, it's page 21 of 46. But I wondered if, and I'm just hoping this is still within this same report. Let me just check. Yes, it's the, could you explain, on page 18, there's a thing called fill rate. It's in the Appendix A, quarter 2, 22 to 23, turnover charts. So I just wanted to understand how is that calculated? That's on page 18. 14 of the, that's written at the bottom of the page, but 18 in the electronic version.
Thank you, Councillor Bradman. Jonathan, do you have any thoughts about that at all?
I'll need to double check that and come back and answer that question. I don't have the raw data with me, unfortunately, at the moment.
Just to clarify, thank you very much. Just to clarify, Councillor Bradman, so you're looking at the...
It's Appendix A in the printed copy, it's page 14, but electronically it's page 18.
So the fill rates?
Yes. And I've just said, is that... So, for example, if we just take a date let's just take the first bar, Q1, 21-22, was over 80% fill rate. Does that mean over 80% of the vacancies? Or 80% of the whole staff?
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So I think, Liz, could you perhaps help with that?
Absolutely. So fill rate is the success that you have in filling jobs. So 80% of jobs in Q1, 21-22 were filled.
So that's fill rate of all jobs.
The jobs advertised in that quarter.
So it's okay. So that's 80% of those advertised
In that quarter.
Okay,
yeah.
right. Okay, thank you very much. Right.
That's great. Thank you very much. Sorry, Councillor Bradman, did you have any
I
other
did
thoughts?
have some others. Yes. Also, on page 26, is that still in this report? I don't want to go on to another report accidentally. Hang on, let me just have a look. Okay, well, wait. That's a question about the next report.
Okay, so thank you both, and thank you for your answer as well as in the support. Councillor Stobart, you had a question there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. One was a simple question, Jonathan, on this move to the private sector. So there's been an uptick in the private sector, perhaps jobs available and so on. I wondered what it was about the private sector then that was creating this. Sorry, I should be addressing the Chair. What it was about the private sector that was creating this this demand, and particularly if the reason for leaving was better work-life balance. How do we understand that, and possibly how do we counter that in the way recruitment, future recruitment is done?
Thank you, Councillor Stobart. And good point. So basically, just to clarify, you're looking at how we're assessing the...
We're understanding this private sector demand. Yeah.
Understood. Thank you. So Jonathan or Liz, I don't know if you've got any thoughts around that particular point at all, around how we're combating or how we're sort of driving our attractiveness against the private sector.
I think that in terms of that, we would need to delve a bit more into the data and to see if there's any common factors. I think in terms of the actual raw data, it was just a number of people that were citing the private sector as one of the main reasons, as opposed to a different reason. They might have other people may have been going to the private sector but not cited that reason. So it would need to be investigated a little bit more, I think.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. And Liz, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, members, you won't be surprised to hear me say that. I think that the 4-day week is a key kind of tool for us in terms of trying to, recruit and retain people in the council. That's exactly the purpose of the trial. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you both for your thoughts. Okay. Yes, Jeff, I think you've got some... Just had your hand up there, so do you have some additional points?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. Through you, traditionally, where the difference between why people went to the private sector and the public sector was based around, often people went into the private sector because of the pay that they would receive, whereas they'd come into the public sector because of the flexibility and work-life balance. What we've seen since COVID and the great resignation, we're finding that the private sector is becoming more flexible, so that actually our competitive edge is being lost a little bit. I mean, it's noticeable that it was the private sector that first did the 4-day week trial, which is almost coming to an end. So I think it's important that we continue to be innovative. People want to come to local authorities often because they want that sense of community. They want to be involved with what they're doing and feeling that they're having a positive impact on their the people that they know and live with. So I think that's the area that we need to start heightening. And certainly a successful 4-day week trial would bring us back into line, I think, at least with the private sector. I think it's unlikely, particularly in hard to fill roles, that we're ever going to be in a position where we compete based around salary costs, unfortunately.
That's great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for those thoughts. Councillor Brandon, I think you had a question.
Yes, I've found the question I was trying to ask, which is in this paper, and it was that in the table on, doesn't have a paper page number, but it's on page 26 of it electronically, which actually is still in this paper. It's in the workforce analytics. And what I noticed was that we've got, just in that snapshot quarter, we've got more people retiring in the current quarter, so that's 4, relative to 1 in the previous quarter. And I'm just wondering if we're losing, if there is something which might be causing a loss of staff who are bound to be experienced. And I wondered if we are at risk of losing expertise there. I wondered if you could comment on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Radden. I don't know who's best placed in the room to be able to essentially address those. What? Jeff, do you have any thoughts at all?
Yes, again, through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Bradnam. I mean, we are affected a little bit by the law of small numbers. 1 and 4 are quite small numbers, so it can seem to be quite a dramatic increase, whereas probably it's more due to the age demographic, that we've got more people just happen to have fallen to a position where they're able to take early retirement. Again, I think what we're seeing is this is part of a national trend. It's not just happening in the public sector or South Cambs. It's happening more across the board. People have reevaluated their life. They're looking at the plans that they're making for what they're going to be doing for the rest of their life, and where they're seeing they've got the opportunity to take early retirement, they're taking that opportunity, whereas perhaps 5 years ago they'd been planning to work right through to they were 75, 76, 77 or whatever the current arrangement. So again, I don't think that's unique to us, but it is certainly something we need to keep an eye on, and it would be interesting to see whether, again, the 4-day week starts to have an impact on that, because some of the things that people often do if they're thinking of retiring is they'll go through a period where they reduce the number of days that they work. So they'll go from working 5 days to 4 days to 3 days. So again, it'll be interesting to see whether the option of having that 4-day week means that people don't feel the need to reduce their hours and perhaps stay on a little bit longer. Hope that's helpful.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Jeff. Good points. It'd be interesting to see what the do we actually have a cross-sector analysis for the industry as a whole as well, because that might be something worth noting. I don't think we actually do at the moment. I think we just look at our own data. Is that right? I don't know, Liz, if you have any thoughts on that, or Jeff.
It's certainly something we can look to obtain. We certainly haven't at the moment. Part of the problems, Chair, is of course this is a little bit retrospective and it takes time for the information to come through. But we can certainly look to talk to colleagues in the sector and see if we can share data on that, because I think it's something that's important to most councils at the moment. So we'll put that in hand.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Great, and thank you for your comments there. Councillor Stobart, I think you had another question.
Chair, it wasn't so much a question as a comment and contrast between the private sector and the public sector. Of course, in the private sector, the adherence to certain qualities, and that might include flexible working, will tend to vary according to the state of the business and the size of the order book and such like. So the one thing, well, amongst many others, that the public sector can offer is a kind of solid commitment. So there is a contrast there beyond beyond what we were talking about, which is that ability of the public sector to be committed long term to a set of qualities. So I think that could be part of the narrative, if you will.
Great. Yes, thank you, Councillor Stobart. Good point. I know that was more of a comment, but I didn't know if Jeff or Liz, if you had any thoughts around.
Again, through you, Chair, yes, actually, that's a very insightful comment. We have been talking to ILGA about how we can do better to advertise the totality of what we offer as a local authority, because you're absolutely right, Councillor. There's a lot of benefits that perhaps we've not been very clear on advertising. So people will often look and compare maybe days leave, salary, and they'll make their judgment based upon that. Whereas we need to be pushing forward on all the other advantages that we offer as a local authority, and ILGA giving us some advice on how we can best do that.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you very much. Good. Councillor Fain, do you have a question? Yeah?
Yes. Interesting what Jeff Mabry was saying in relation to the flexibility that local authorities can offer. I think I haven't seen any specific data on this, but one of the reactions to the cost of living crisis is many people are considering whether to postpone retirement. And of course, there can be significant advantages to employers in keeping on people who may be very fit and able beyond retirement age. And I wondered how flexible the district council is able to be in encouraging people to stay on beyond normal retirement age.
Good point. Thank you, Councillor Fain. So just to clarify, you
could have declared an interest.
So just to clarify, just to understand the flexibility that the council has in respect to enforcing sort of like a retirement age. Yeah? I don't know, Jeff, you got thoughts?
Yes, Chair. I mean, we're pretty flexible as a local authority. The challenge often is that people coming up to retirement will often want to reduce their hours, and some of the challenges that we have is around the impact that has on their pension when they finally do retire. So I'm not being a technical expert on pensions, it's difficult for me to give a detailed answer on that, but I think that's the challenge that we're looking at overcoming. Would it be okay if we get back to Councillor Fain outside this meeting with a more detailed explanation?
That's absolutely that's good. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jeff. Good. Thank you very much for presenting and answering the questions. Do we have any other questions in the room at all or online? No? Okay. Again, thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Liz, for your thoughts on that. We're invited again to note the comments on the report. And with that, we can move on to our sixth item, which is the final item for business today, which is the sickness absence for the second quarter of the year. Again, we are invited to note the contents of this report. We have Claire Loma-Hill, HR advisor, to present this report for us today. Claire?
Okay, thank you very much. So just to sort of follow on from that we've moved, following conversations with Jeff, we've moved to a dashboard style of reporting. So this is a lot sort of briefer version of the report, and then the further analytics report which follows. So just to confirm that the best value performance indicator for sickness absence for quarter two, we're actually under target this last quarter, 2.97 days for the depot, and the rest of the council 1.59 days. We've just put in the top 3 reasons for absence of stress, anxiety and depression, COVID-19 and cancer. And further into the report, we've put sort of actions that HR have taken to support employees with absence through various communication methods such as HR newsletters, through Liz's chief executive weekly vlog, and further sort of signposting further information via email and on Insight, such as employee assistance programs, mental health first aiders, and things like that. We've also recently had in-house training from Macmillan to support line managers so they can support individuals who are affected by cancer. And then very recently, we've sort of added to the menopause policy that we're putting further support in place for managers and colleagues, training, awareness, and menopause cafes for individuals to attend, and further information again is available on Insight and communicated via the various communication methods. So just a very quick overview, and if anyone has any questions. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Claire, for that. Yes, Councillor Bramman, do you have a question?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I was alarmed to see in the data, I mean, I know you're aware of it, that we've got quite high numbers of days, and it's you've summarised it in your summary as well, high numbers of days lost due to stress, anxiety and depression, and obviously you're taking steps to offer support to staff through that. And we can't, it wouldn't be appropriate to ask people necessarily whether that's stress that's coming from domestic situations or stress coming from work. But do you have a feel for that at all, or are you able to ask that question? I'm not sure if it's an okay question to ask, but I just wondered if it's cost of living crisis going on, isn't it? And I'm just wondering if that's the sort of stress that's increasing rather than stress to do with just work-based situations.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, thank you, Councillor Bradman. I don't know, Claire or Liz, I don't know if you've got sort of insights or thoughts.
Yes, I'm happy to answer. So we can, the reason we are at least able to work out whether it's work, personal, or work and personal. So we've got some indication if there's any more support, we might need to sort of angle it more from a work support place, or if it's personal, signposting some more information to help support them personally. We've done a lot of work recently through our communication channels, such as HR's newsletters, emails, very much so about financial well-being support of training and signposting to information out there, because you know, what sort of advice is there to help them, employee assistance, what training and so on to help them. So that's very much key, sort of something that we're trying to promote and support colleagues at the moment.
That's great. Thank you very much, Claire. Do we have any other questions? Yes, Councillor Helm.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I see number one, as Councillor Bradman has already said, is the stress, anxiety and depression. And yet we have also got many actions that we are trying to do under paragraph 5. I'm concerned that even though we've got all these bullet points that we're trying to do, it doesn't seem to be having an impact. Are we doing the right thing, or should we be taking a completely different approach? And maybe something which would cost us more, but in the long run will save us quite a lot of time, and more importantly, save the anxiety and stress of our actual employees. So all very good, these, but it don't seem to be having that much of an impact, even though our figures are below what we wanted them to be, which is good. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Howell. Claire, I don't know if you've got any thoughts or insights into that at all.
And I think is all I can add really is that it may be we want to, in the first instance, make people very much aware of what help and support is out there, and it does depend on that take up of that support if they feel they're able to, if it's the right support for them. And I think and often we know it will also depend on how much willing they're sort of able to talk and share with, whether it be HR or their line manager, as to what support we can put in place, really. And it may sort of take, it may not show an immediate impact, but maybe take over a longer period of time to show that.
Thank you, Claire. And Jeff, I've just seen you pop your hand up there as well.
Yes, thank you, Jeff. Through you. We do talk regularly with the unions to try and make sure that we're keeping on top of best practice, and we're very happy to look at any suggestions that they have. And we do regularly meet with, we send representatives to the head of HR meetings nationally, where things such as the best way of tackling challenges such as this are discussed. So we're keeping very much alive to it. I know we in the HR team have, very much aware that we're doing what we believe to be the best thing, but other people could have really good ideas. And if we hear about those good ideas, we're very happy to adopt them. So I can reassure Councillor Howell that we're keeping an open mind, and we're keeping our ear to the ground to make sure that we're doing the best that we can to address these challenges.
That's great. Thank you, Jeff, for those thoughts. Councillor Howell, do you have any additional thoughts on that?
Thank you, Chairman. No, I mean, if you've got a broken arm, there's normally quite a set procedure of how to set it. When you've got something which is stress and anxiety, you have to be able to look at 101 different options to be able to help the individual. So I understand what you're doing and saying. I'm very glad that you're keeping an open mind, and I do hope that we'll keep on doing that, because I do think this is one thing that not one size doesn't fit all. But thank you, Chairman.
Thank you both. And actually, on that point, hopefully not sounding like too much of a broken record, but I think it would be really good to, and I don't know because I can't see it in this report, but if we're keeping track on like national averages and comparisons to other councils as well, just to sort of like look at how we're doing or faring in comparison to that. I don't know, Jeff, I've seen just popped up. Are we keeping track of that?
We try to, Chair. The problem we always have is, as I said, there's a delay before the information is available about what's happening nationally. And certainly one of the things that's been highlighted here today is over the last few months, the cost of living crisis is really starting to bite. So it will probably be something like 6 to 9 months before we get any accurate information that would mean that we could do some meaningful comparisons. But again, we'll do our best to gather the information as it comes in, and we'll look to see whether or not we can benchmark against that, and perhaps bring a report back to a future committee when we've got that more reliable information, so we can be confident in what we're telling you.
Super. Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you both. Councillor Stobart, I think you have a question.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe this is more of a comment, but this comparison, quarter by quarter, year by year, and so on, is actually quite a difficult business. I mean, if we asked a statistician, they'd come back with highly technical things like, the need for significance testing and so on, but our sample sizes here might be so small. So maybe back to a point the Chief Executive made earlier about diversity, but diversity in a different context, that picking up signs of things, take-up of advice, of the feel that a manager or colleagues might have about a situation, as well as the numbers. And I think this is probably particularly significant as the impact of the process towards the 4-day week and the trial take place is a kind of a balanced, well, we can't see it in the data, but there may be anecdotal information that, when taken as a whole, does give a very strong indication of change and improvement. So I think it's a tricky area and requires some delicate judgment, but there is always that resort to the highly technical when you do want to compare, for example, with national behaviours. But I just wanted to point that out and understand the difficulties of the situation. But yeah, diversity is always a good process. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stobart. That, again, understanding that was a comment, but actually, yeah, I don't know if if we have any thoughts on that from any officers or from Liz at all? No?
So can I take that one away, Chair?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Good point. Thank you very much. Councillor Bradman.
Thank you. Another thing that crosses my mind is I know from the outset and before, back in 2019 and 2020, we've done a great job of enabling our staff to work from home, and that's been a godsend while people had to work from home. And I know because of that we've set up good team working arrangements, but I just wondered in this, how would we know if a member of staff was struggling on their own? Is that a well-rehearsed interaction that we have between team leaders and staff? Because I just wondered about somebody feeling a bit overwhelmed and working from home and maybe feeling a bit isolated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradman. Yes, is there any thoughts from any of the officers or at all around that? Or Liz?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Claire.
I was just going to say is we very much from HR want to sort of put out there that support that's available so that people feel at ease and open to speak to their line managers about any issues, and that the individuals can come to HR if they feel difficult to speak to their line manager, or line managers can come to us to ask for any sort of support. I think it's knowing that we're there and open, and the support that is out there, and getting that message across.
The question actually was, how would we know if a member of staff was struggling on their own and didn't want to say? So, right. I mean, you know, I'm not asking whether we're checking parameters or, you know, but I mean, how would we know? Would we be checking their output? I mean, that's the whole point of planning for the 4-day week, isn't it? Setting up methods by which we can check about people's output. So, but, it's complicated, isn't it? Because they might be outputting brilliantly, but actually struggling emotionally, or they might be okay emotionally, but actually not producing any output. I just wondered how we keep track of that. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, I've seen you've popped your hand up there, Jeff. So.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add what Claire was saying, obviously an important part of team management in working in a hybrid environment is to keep in contact with your team. And what we're doing is making sure that our team managers have got the skills to do that effectively. We're running a comprehensive training program for them, which would make sure that they're delivering on that. But yeah, we do monitor performance on a regular basis. We monitor a sickness on a regular basis, because there are patterns that you often see with people who are starting to feel stress. You might well start seeing short-term intermittent absence due to things like headaches. We have and will be bringing a more detailed report back to this committee for a future meeting, but we have recently undertaken a very comprehensive staff survey, which went into a lot of detail with individual people about how they were feeling within themselves and about the organisation, and then gave each individual person that completed that survey a personal report, which talked about the areas that where things were going well, some areas that they needed to do a little bit more work on, and identified some potential danger signs, and I highlighted the sort of things that they can do to head off those sort of challenges. So we're trying to be as proactive as we possibly can. I mean, one of the things that I think you're right, Councillor Bradham. If people are working only from home, it's particularly challenging to keep an eye on their well-being. So we're encouraging teams to get together at least a couple of times a month for a day or a half day or whatever, so that you can actually have eyes on people, and you can start to see whether their behaviour's changing, or how their interactions with other people are going, and potentially give them the opportunity to talk about any challenges in the way that they're feeling. And the mental health first aiders that Claire's already mentioned about gives people that might not be comfortable necessarily talking to their line manager about these challenges an opportunity to have those discussions with somebody who is independent of their direct working environment, in case they're worried that they might be seen as being weak or non-productive by doing so. So we're putting quite a lot of levers in place. Now it is a bit of a two-way street. We can encourage people to contact us in a way that's most appropriate for them, but we do also encourage people to recognise in themselves when they're starting to potentially display some symptoms of stress, and to take up the opportunity of getting the guidance or the support that they need. Also, I know that colleagues in HR who have regular interactions with members of the services on a regular basis will highlight if they've got concerns, and we can offer them the opportunity to have a confidential talk with a counsellor that we even we in HR wouldn't necessarily know the details of, so that they've got that anonymity which gives them the confidence to talk about it. I mean, it is a national problem. I think, as you've highlighted, we've got the challenge of, a cost of living crisis where people are worried about what's going to be happening in their private lives, and that often puts strain not only on their financial part of their private lives but on their relationships as well. There's a lot of evidence that shows that as people feel the pressure financially, it can have pressure on their personal relationships. So we're very conscious of that, and we're trying to make sure that we keep that range of opportunities available. As Councillor Howell says, it's easy we know what to do to mend a broken arm, but there's a wider range of things that's needed for people who potentially starting to suffer from stress. Again, hope that's helpful.
That's great. Thank you very much, Jeff. Yes, Councillor Brand, what's your thoughts on that?
Thank you. I'm really reassured to hear all of that, Jeff, and I'm really pleased that you're being so intuitive about it, and that our managers are being supported to help their staff. Are we offering any similar support to members?
Yes, Jeff, have you got any thoughts on that?
I must admit, I need to go and speak with Jonathan Moulton, who's, I know, preparing some member development opportunities. I don't recall off the top of my head the detail of what's involved in all of those. So if that's okay, Councillor Bradnam, I'll get back to you after the meeting.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jeff. Councillor Fane, if you've got a question.
Thank you. On an unrelated issue, very simple question arises out of the table on page 29, which includes the total employee count. So when, for instance, we have in shared planning 122.9674636 employees, FTE basis, of course, 123 as I might call it, is that the total number in shared planning for both Cambridge City and South Cambs, or is that some sort of an apportionment? I think it is the former, but I wanted to just confirm, similarly for shared waste.
Thank you, Councillor Fane. Sorry, just to clarify, so you're looking at page 29, you're looking at the... 29
of the printed version. I'm sorry, I don't know, I think it may be page 14. The absence analytics for quarter 2. Okay. The table is headed absence by organisation structure.
Okay, that's page, thank you both, and thank you, Councillor Bradman. So that's page 33 in the digital copy. Claire, can you answer that question at all?
So it will be the average count of, it is the shared, do you mean of the shared partnership between for waste and Greater Cambridge Planning? It is the combination of the two, so all those who are employed by South Cambs.
Sorry, hang on. Can I just clarify that point? Sorry, Claire. So that's the total or the average, or is it the combined?
So just to get that, so it is, so that is page 33. And just to clarify, it was the employee count, FTE.
That's correct. So the current FTE.
Yeah. Yes. So that is all for all staff. So that's just.
And just to clarify, when we're saying FTE, we're talking about full-time equivalent or actual number of individuals?
So it's actually full-time equivalent. So they're working hours rather than a head count.
Okay, so not head count. Okay. Councillor Payne, does that answer your question? Perfect. Thank you for the clarity and sorry for the confusion there. Did we have any other questions at all? No? Okay. Good. Well, thank you very much, Claire, and thank you, Jeff, for all your input and support there. That's great. Thank you very much. Again, the committee are invited to note the contents of that report. So thank you. That actually brings our business today to a close. The meeting for this committee, the next meeting for this committee is to be held on Thursday, the 23rd of February 2023. I got confused there because it's next year, which is a little bit confusing. But thank you very much all, and we'll see you then.